Always a pleasure to welcome in our friend and the voice of the Astros for the last 28 years, Bill Brown. And guess what, everybody? Over twice as many people will get to watch Bill this year. The long nightmare is over for the Astros fans who've been out in the cold. And Bill, I'm sure you're hearing from a lot of folks over the last couple of months the excitement over the Root Sports announcement.
Yes, we are. And also the moves that the team has made, Robert, with the acquisitions of the free agents and the trades. It looks on paper to be a much better team this year and a much better video product for your home.
Lots of new additions this year. You've got Gregerson, Neshek, Lowry, Rasmus, even a new manager with A.J. Hinch. Is there an addition that really intrigues you this year, Bill, of all the guys, or maybe a couple of the guys that really intrigue you?
Well, there are several, actually, to speak of, Robert. I think Hank Conger might do a nice job as presumably the backup to Jason Castro, but he's a switch hitter, so who knows how much playing time he might get. That gives the Astros somebody who's a little bit younger than the guy who's no longer around, and you know, he did a nice job as a backup catcher, but in the sense that the Astros now are trying to reposition themselves more for the future. Carlos Corcoran is 29, 30 years old. He was very good playing once a week, maybe twice a week, but I think Conger can play more and can hold up. I think Valbuena coming in to play some third base gives them a left-handed bat. And what they've done is just create this competition. They've got Lowry, and there was no competition there. He'll be the shortstop, but they've created competition at all the outfield spots now, at first base for John Singleton. And it's been made clear to John Singleton and Matt Dominguez that they do not have jobs. They have to earn jobs. And I think that probably brings out the best in players most of the time.
It's been 6 straight years with losing seasons, and GM Jeff Luhnow made some big moves, of course, this offseason and predicted a winning record this season. You don't get the sense that Jeff would make that proclamation without some serious analysis and running a few numbers. Were you surprised at what he said, Bill, considering we're talking about a 12-win increase?
I was a little bit surprised because Jeff is not given to proclamations like that, but you're right. He does take a long look at numbers. He looks at not only that, but the caliber of people he's acquiring. And I think the Astros have some very good players. There's been a lot of focus on the strikeouts in the lineup, how many strikeouts there will be. Well, there also could be a lot of home runs, too. So that's the general trade-off that happens in baseball. With home runs come strikeouts, unless the player is an Albert Pujols or somebody in the upper echelon of hitters. But, yeah, I think it was mildly surprising to hear him say that, but I think the players have to like it, because if the general manager has that kind of confidence in the team, that has to make them feel good about the team. And, you know, the new guys, it's difficult to say that a Gregerson and a Neshek would not agree to come to a team that's been really down for years now if they didn't have hope that this team would get good quickly.
Hey, Bill, what do you think about the starting pitching for the upcoming season? Because they have, obviously, Keuchel coming back, McHugh, but a lot of people have questioned maybe the depth, and also the Astros are expecting somebody like a Mark Appel maybe at some point in the season to help. Well, what do you think of the starting rotation going into this season?
Well, it's predicated a lot, RG, on Keuchel doing somewhere close to what he did last year, McHugh doing somewhere close to what he did last year. Feldman had a pretty good year. And Oberholzer right now is penciled in as the 4th starter. I know that Jeff Luhnow was trying to get a veteran to enter that starting rotation. As you know, Ryan Vogelsong was in for a physical, and the Astros talked contract with him. That didn't work out. He went back to the Giants, but they still say they might add somebody. I know Barry Zito's out there. How much he has left in his career is hard to answer right now. There are a few other guys who haven't signed, but probably it looks like a guy like Dan Straley gets a shot at being the number 5 starter. He might be leading in the clubhouse, going to spring training in that contest, but there will be others as well. You mentioned Appel. Appel is coming along quickly, and there are several other guys who had good minor league seasons who can, you know, Alex White was out all year. Who knows if he's healthy, what impact he might be able to make in the spring. So it's the starting pitching probably is what should be emphasized by people more than the strikeouts in the lineup, because that typically drives the boat with where a team winds up in the standings.
You talked about the home runs and strikeouts earlier, all the home runs and strikeouts we're expecting from the Astros. just out of curiosity, as a longtime baseball fan, how do you feel about the direction we're going? I guess the new math, from what most of us kind of understand, is that the strikeout has been devalued quite a bit.
I would agree with that. And I know it's going to be an interesting situation because the hitting coaches will be new as well. And I thought that John Maley and Ralph Dickinson were really taking hold with some of the hitters like Chris Carter in the second half of the year last year. But the strikeouts probably are something the Astros are just going to have to manage around. Typically, if a player's been in the big leagues for 2 or 3 years, he doesn't eliminate the strikeouts. He doesn't substantially cut down the strikeouts. That's just the type of player he is. And they know that. They know when they draft players who are contact hitters who have roughly as many walks as strikeouts, that projects a lot better in the big leagues. And, you know, they've got a guy like Nolan Fontana in the minor leagues who has done that in the past. Ronald Torreyes has done that. He's a little second baseman. So those guys down the road might be factors in the club. But typically, when a guy who's played as long as Jed Lowry has played compiles the numbers he has, you tend to look at that, the walks and strikeouts, and say that's about what we're going to get this year on an average basis. And I think the strikeouts are going to be a good part of it. I think with strikeout-laden offenses who also feature home runs, it's very unpredictable what you might get on a certain day. If a pitcher really has it going against that type of lineup, it could be an ugly game offensively. On the other hand, it might be a 5 or 6 home run game against somebody else. So it's an uneven type of performance, but always exciting with the strikeouts and homers.
With all the extra time, are you and Ash preparing more anecdotes to kill some time with this year's lineup?
You know, that's a good idea. We probably should. I know one thing we're going to try to do, we've had one little meeting, and we'll probably have another one with Root Sports, is introduce the viewers to the new players and to the old players, because, as you indicated, a lot of them haven't seen games in a while. So it's sort of a reintroduction, maybe a little more storytelling about each player and filling in background and things of that nature. We went heavily on statistics the last couple of years. There's a small core of people who really likes that part of the broadcast. I think that will be toned down this year. We'll do some of it, but less. And I think we'll do more trying to get more human interest and storytelling and things of that nature.
Speaking of that, what do you think's changed most about broadcasting baseball over the past? You've been in broadcasting with the Astros for almost 30 years. What's been the biggest change for you as an announcer?
Well, I think, RG, there's not nearly as much flexibility as there used to be. We used to be able to tell stories. And right now, if that's your approach, you'd better limit it to 20 seconds. And I try to think of it as a pyramid. Let's start at the top of this pyramid and tell this story about this player or whatever it might be. And let's just get the very top in between these two pitches. And then if nothing happens and we can expand on that, let's fill in a little bit more on down the pyramid. And if it's a really slow inning, maybe we can get everything we plan to get in on the air, but that seldom happens. It used to happen all the time, but now, you know, we have a sponsored item here and we have a replay there, and there's just a whole lot more production going on in TV than there was back in the 1970s.
You know, Biggio got into the Hall of Fame last month, and I want to talk a little bit more about Biggio and just him getting in. But I wanted to ask you, you know, he's the first player that spent his vast majority of his career in an Astros uniform to get in the Hall. But one thing I thought was the way baseball does things, he gets in on Sunday, July the 26th, and the ceremony starts 12:30 Houston time. The Astros play at 1:10 in Kansas City. So you no longer do the road games, though. So two-part question. Are you looking at going to the induction, since you just followed him his whole career, and it'd be a great opportunity? And also, unlike basketball and football, baseball, you know, as we're talking about, doesn't have that spotlight on the Hall of Fame induction. Everybody plays a game on that day. What do you think about that?
Well, it's hard to avoid with the schedule the way it is in baseball. The induction would have to be on a weekend for the benefit of the fans, and there are never any weekend days off for baseball teams, so it's unavoidable unless it were to happen over the All-Star break, something like that. And I don't think that would ever be the case, because that would take the spotlight away from the All-Star game. But to answer your question, I hope to be there. I don't have any solid plans to go, did not make my own arrangements to go. as of now, I think I submitted my schedule that I would be in Kansas City working those games on a rare road trip. But everything is subject to change, Robert, and I would much prefer to be in Cooperstown. I haven't been there since the 70s, and I know Root Sports is planning to cover that. So there might be a way to do cut-ins or something. I don't know if that's allowed probably not on a live basis, I would think. By the Hall of Fame people. I've never really heard whether it is or not, but I think in view of the historic nature of the day, it would be nice to have a few reports from there, and I wouldn't mind being the guy who does the reports.
After everything that happened in the last few weeks with Craig, just give me your just in general thoughts on him finally getting, well, we say finally, it took him 3 years. We felt it was finally, though.
Yeah, we really did, and I don't understand why he wasn't the first ballot Hall of Famer. To me, he's a one-of-a-kind player. There's never been anybody who's done what he's done in terms of being an all-star catcher, an all-star second baseman, moving to the outfield, moving back to second base. He always did what the team wanted him to do and sacrificed his body, taking all those pitches off his body and setting the record for being hit by pitches, stealing the bases. Just set the tone in the clubhouse, a good leader. Off the field has been impeccable with his work with the Sunshine Kids and other charities. His family, I told him a couple of weeks ago when I was talking to his oldest son, Connor, your kids are so normal. And I meant that as a compliment, and I know he took it that way. But that, as we all know, those of us who have dealt with athletes for many years and guys who, have very fine careers usually have some difficulties off the field. That's fairly common. Because of the amount of time they spend away from their families. It's difficult. So that's a credit to Patty. And I just think that he's been the perfect Hall of Famer. He's done everything most fans would want of a Hall of Famer.
What do you think of Jeff Bagwell coming back to the organization, first of all, and then also his Hall of Fame candidacy? And even the commissioner weighed in on that. The new commissioner, Rob Manfred, talked about, you shouldn't just allege or unless there's actual proof and evidence, that's when you should cast your vote against the person possibly or not select them for the Hall of Fame. What's your feeling on that matter? And again, about Bagwell coming back to the Astros?
Well, I was very happy the commissioner said that. That's my feeling completely. I think that Jeff is unfairly painted with that broad brush from the steroid era. There's no proof. There's no admission that he used any steroids. There's just suspicion because he got so big. And Kurt Schilling said in an article a couple of weeks ago, hey, I was his teammate. I saw him spend hours in the weight room. I never saw any indication that he was using any illegal substance. I just saw a guy who worked hard in the weight room. And so it's circumstantial evidence. It's not even evidence that people use not to vote for him. I think it's a shame. I think he's one of the top 4 or 5 first basemen in the history of the game. And his numbers would have been better had he not played so many games in the Astrodome. I think he was a quintessential Hall of Fame player, and I don't think I'll change unless something comes out that we're not aware of now. So my hope is, I think there is kind of a movement among the voters to now look at players from the steroid era based solely on the numbers. And if they truly follow through as a group on that, he'll be in very soon. I think next year, even though that would be a large leap in voting percentages if he's elected next year, the field is not so numerous next year. So he has a pretty good chance of going in. And I really hope Jeff is a Hall of Famer next year. I was hoping for this year as well. As far as him joining the organization again, I think it's a good move for him and for the team. And for whatever reason, he was disenchanted with what was going on in the past. The new manager reached out to him. That seems to have had effect. And I'd love to see him be a bigger part of the organization.
I wanted to ask you kind of a broadcasting question. You had that great run of winning teams in the late 90s and the mid 2000s. You go from that to the historically kind of bad recent 3-year run. What's the difference in your outlook as a broadcaster and just kind of as a fan of the team as you came to the ballpark for recent teams? And how does your mindset change as a broadcaster when you're going from, that late 90s great run to this recent, the recent problems?
It is different, Robert. The adrenaline of being with a first place team coming to the ballpark every day is automatically there. It doesn't have to be manufactured. But, when we sign on, of course, nobody knows what kind of team we're going to have each and every year. Expectations sometimes are high and the teams fall short. And it's up to the broadcaster as a professional to deal with that and to try to find an interesting way to present that night's game. It's not always going to be a pretty game, but we're there to provide entertainment for fans, and it's up to us to figure out a way to do that. Pardon me while this massive truck drives by here. And it's more of a challenge. It definitely is more of a challenge when the team is losing 100 games or more. There's no doubt about it being difficult. But I think, that's why it's better sometimes to have a dispassionate approach rather than get down about the way the team is performing. Hey, we've got a broadcast to do, and sometimes it's not a bad thought to tell yourself, well, I just arrived from the planet Mars. We're doing a baseball game tonight. What's interesting about this game? And that way you avoid getting weighed down by maybe a 10 or 12 game losing streak, something like that.
Well, one last thing. You've got an auction coming up. I wanted to give you a chance to talk about that. It's coming up this Saturday, right?
Thank you. Yes, we have a Salute to Our Heroes, and it's at the Omni Westside, Houston. Oliver North is the speaker. I know it's Valentine's Day on Saturday night, but we have a great auction. We have chocolates and champagne at the annual dinner, so we're covered for Valentine's Day. And we have a lot of great auction items: fishing trips, hunting trips, autograph balls. I've got Altuve to autograph a cap for me from the All-Star game. It wasn't worn in the All-Star game, but it's an All-Star cap. Got an Altuve and Biggio autograph ball. Got an Altuve broken bat, and things like that. So we still have a couple days for people to get tickets, and they can do that by going to www.thecfef.org. And thank you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And, just a couple of weeks away now, Bill, from getting this thing started. So lots of excitement for Astros fans. Tons of reasons to be really excited this year. Thanks again for joining us. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Robert and RJ. Pleasure was mine.
Don't forget, you can now listen to Houston Sports Talk weekly on 106.1 FM Tuesdays at 5 p.m. And you can hear more of our interviews at HoustonSportsTalk.net. Subscribe for free to our podcast on iTunes or with the Stitcher app.